Hello and welcome back to Compiler Programming. Today I want to tackle this issue on the GitHub. Basically, the problem is that I have these loops that are implemented as macros, which I find pretty neat. I have a while loop, I have a for loop here, and the trouble with them right now is that they do not support break or continue statements. And the reason that these things don't work is because there is an issue with how scopes are resolved inside of these loops. So these condition stuff and body, they are macros by themselves. So whenever we, let's open maybe FizzBuzz as one of the main examples of how this works. We have a for loop in here, and these parts of the for loop, they all need to be inside of the same scope. Otherwise, like I wouldn't be able to do this, right? If this I is not in the same scope as this I, then I just cannot increment it, which is no good. So whenever I expand parts of the loop, then I need to make sure that the scope is correct. At the same time, if I want to somehow reference this label, then I have a problem that I need to be able to look it up by some name, but that name should not be the name that is generally available inside of these scopes. So that is sort of the issue at hand, and I need to figure out how to deal with that. This is probably going to require quite a few things, but let's just get started. Right, so first things first is, again, we probably would want to have a test for something like this. I think I already have a test for while loop. Right, and we can probably get a test as well. So how would I do this? Test. Okay, checker. And so I need some kind of condition on which I'm going to break. Well, actually, let's just not even have a condition. Let's just break right away. So something like this. Although that might, yeah, let's do like this. I still want to leave this here because I don't want to end up in an infinite loop. So it is a bit easier to see that the test actually failed. And here I'm expecting this thing to return 0 no matter what we do. If it doesn't return 0, then I have a problem. Actually, I should even leave these in. Right. So that seems fine as a test. To use break statement inside of the while loop. Good. Let's run the tests. Okay, we have failed we have no idea what break is. That is a good, even more or less, at least a good error message. And now we just need to figure out what to do about it. Well, here's how I'm thinking this is supposed to work. First thing is that I need some way to refer to a particular scope in here, which is not something I can do at the moment. So let's start with that, I guess. How would that look like? So I'll leave this in and go and try to add. Where would it go? Oh, somewhere here. That's fine. I know these are operators. I want something like this. Yeah, Fibonacci, that sounds good. Let's put it somewhere over here. Should be able to refer to the current scope. Okay. And we are going to do, so we'll define a variable. That seems fine. And now I'm gonna do and this scope is at scope, and at scope is nothing at the moment. So let's see what that does. Actually, this will do exactly nothing. Yeah, because we are not referencing this. But if I do this scope.result, then now we should actually get an error. Okay, we even have more than error. We have unknown operator, and that is because of the constant expression parsing. Okay, constant expression. Somewhere here. Token check operator. Good. Token dispatch constant operator. Right. Right. Okay. So let's add our ampersand. We will say that this is keyword if keyword tag keyword, yeah, if it's not an identifier, then we have a problem because we expect it to say scope. For now, just panic to do. And then we would say I actually have a nicer way to do it. If not, token match keyword token pattern tag is token tag ID and source. Actually, don't even need to check for ID. I just can check for particular source, which is scope. Okay. If it's these two, then I can do stuff, and I have it somewhere already. Captured scope. Don't I check? Yeah, here. So I need to make one of these. I already make one for the module, but here I will make one for the local scope. Right. Right. Okay, you're complaining that modular scope is not a thing because I need to say that this is just a context scope. Right. Sounds good. Okay. What's next? Well, I guess now I have the scope available, so let's try to run the tests again and see if that actually worked. Great, so I think the whole scope actually worked. Where is it? Fibonacci, yeah, should be able to refer to the current scope. Amazing. So now I'm able to capture the scope. Actually, I can even commit this change separately, I think. So we need this hunk and this one, but not this one. Okay. Episode 145. Add an ability to refer to the current, or to capture current scope. Right. Okay. This actually will be quite a dangerous operation because it doesn't capture it in a sense of like a lambda or something. So it doesn't correctly track those variables, but instead it just literally gives you it very raw. So I will need to think about maybe making it safer, but for now I'm okay with how it is. Okay, so I can have a scope. That means that here I can say that, and the scope is scope. Maybe I should allow to do that in a regular non-constant expression. Let's leave it as it is right now. It's fine. So first of all, let's see if that breaks anything. it doesn't break extra stuff. That means that I can do this. The next trouble is I need to be able to pass this scope to these functions so that they can kind of expand it, which also is not a thing that I can do right now. So there needs to be a way to make that happen. Maybe. I mean, in general, they don't actually care. That is an interesting question. Maybe I was a bit early in trying to make that happen. Let's think how this might work. So I can I guess I need to define it actually here somehow. And so what if I just do this? Syntax, statement, break, and this would be go to a loop end. Something like that. And let's see what that will even do. Okay. Let's open up the debugger and see what's going on. Where are we? We are inside of the function call, and you are very unhappy about the arguments. Because right. I feel like I need to improve parsing a bit, but that is besides the point. We are not accepting syntax as a nested thing. That is interesting. So how would that look like? So on one hand, I don't want to have to define and to parse it every time like this. It would be much nicer if I would be able to sort of have it somehow outside. Like so. I mean, one thing I could do is do something like this. So this is just going to be an alias for a function call always. And then this function call itself is what is going to be provided by these things. That might work. I mean, I can even do this stuff, right? Go to loop end. This also is perfectly okay. The only thing is we still need to provide loop end, right? So let's see what happens if I just do this. We still have a fail, and it says that we cannot parse the expression. Okay, what can't you parse? Okay, so the problem is that token stack is empty, I guess. No, the problem is that token stack is actually not empty. It has two items which are right. So we expanded it here, but because this is an expression, I guess, then we don't do the right thing, maybe. Let's see if that is better. Okay, that is actually better. And where is it? Break. Right, this also still needs to be 0. But we are... all of this just means that we are not hygienic. So this label actually leaks outside. Okay, we have loop end here, and we are something like that. So this will all work. However, it's not great that we are implicitly referring to this variable. I want it to be not global, but rather local in the function somehow. So how would we make that happen? Well, first let's add a test for loop, maybe, or let's add a test for continue. And continue will be a bit more tricky because I do need to use an if here. should be able to use continue statement inside of the while loop. And I can, I guess, say that if x is 2 or x is 1, and then yeah. How would that work? Then x is 0 and continue. Maybe something like that. Not sure if that's a good way to set this up. Okay. So that means that if it's 0, it will be 0. If it's 1, it will be 1. And then if it's 2, it should be 2. If I'm thinking about this right. Okay, let's see if that is the case. Undefined variable continue, that's fine. Loop start. Well, we are crashing somehow. Well, let's see why is that. Well, we are really crashing. So let's see. What's going on there? Are we crashing for this one? No. Are we crashing for this one? Yes. So then let's see the disassembly of whatever is happening here. So we are here, we create two variables that are 0. Okay, this is, I guess, sum, and this is for the comparison. Okay, we do the comparison, it's not lower, so we continue with here. We do another comparison with 1, and if not equal, we clear it out, right? Okay. So we clear out ECX. Where are the registers here? RCX is 1. And then we jump to 20. Well, that is obviously very broken. What is 20? I wonder if this is even initialized. So is it possible that it didn't find the right label after all. What if I put something weird here? What would that do? That does exactly the same thing. Right. So it's defined. Right. So here's the issue. We have a label here, but at the same time, so let's consider how this works. We say go to loop start, and this is fine, right? Because we have already defined loop start and we know how to go there. But for actually no, loop end works fine, and loop start doesn't. So what would that mean? I guess let's just break in here, and also we will break in go to and see what's going on there. Which test are we in? Right. There is a bunch of go-to tests before this one, so let's wait for the right one and see where we are. So we are in parse go-to. What are our view tokens? We have so this is the condition. All right. That means I need the next one. Okay. The next. Then branch. Okay, I'm getting a bit confused about where this thing actually is. Okay, are we even still in the same test? We are. So it's all inside of the right test, but I don't think I got to, okay, I think this is where I actually want to be. Have loop start here, keyword, go to index, rest should be fine. Yeah. So we have loop start here. We don't have it more than one. That is great. We get the identifier. We check that it is an identifier. and we try to look up the scope entry. Okay, what is our scope entry? It is now. So what it will do is it will try to define this scope entry, and this is where things go wrong. Okay. Now the big question is, how is it supposed to work? So statement doesn't actually introduce its own scope, or does it? Let me quickly check that. That would be here in parse syntax definition. So what are we doing here? We are parsing the token, blah blah blah, and then we are capturing the scope in a macro as the current scope. Okay, and then we are pushing it into here. And what happens in parse macro statement? Okay, it does the parsing. That's not the interesting part. The interesting part is in apply macro syntax. Okay, so the interesting part is, so it does use this scope here. So it uses a scope that we captured for the expansion. Right. Which means okay, first of all, I think I can simplify this setup here and just put continue at the end of this, because that should do exactly nothing, right? And getting back to the main problem though. This scope is the top level scope, but I don't want it to be. I want it to somehow do something else. Okay. So how would an explicit version of that look like? Let's start with that. I can say break macro is a macro function that accepts a scope, which is a scope. It doesn't return anything. It also needs to be I mean, goto should actually work here, I guess. And then I do go to scope loop. end. So we have loop scope here. And there is still trouble with end because I parse from top to bottom, and that means that the end actually is not known at that time. Right. So maybe what I should do is be explicit about it and allow to kind of set the placeholders, although that would be quite inconvenient. Not sure. Well, let's do the inconvenient version and then I will think about how to deal with it later, maybe. So let's say we have these two macros. Continue macro. Well, no, that also doesn't work. So my problem is right now I can't attach a scope to this statement here. Right. But the break was working, right? So how did that work? How did break work? How did break work? Let's undo a bunch of stuff. And maybe disable the continue test. Just for now. Okay, so the break works somehow. But does it actually work or it only accidentally works? That's the question. Okay, it does actually work. So that means, so what is this expansion scope? Expansion scope is the scope of the macro. So it shouldn't be able to this shouldn't be able to actually look it up, but it can. Which is very, very strange. How does that work? Oh, right. I think I know how that works. Right now it doesn't create its own scope. Right. So that's kind of problematic. in here, expansion scope. Oh no, it does create its own scope. That makes it even stranger. Go to. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say if slice equal id source is loop end, whatever. I don't know. I just need to be able to put a breakpoint in here. Let's try that. And which test are we on? Okay. Yeah, actually want a different thing. This also doesn't do anything. Is this better? Great. So we are in the right test. We will be jumping to loop end. What are you doing here? So first of all, what I want to know is what is the macro that we are trying to apply? Okay, token view, fine. Let's look at that. And we are trying to look at break. So we are trying to apply the break macro. Good. That makes sense. Getting back to goto. And what I wanted to look is about the scope. So which scope over here? This is 258 at the end. And what is the expansion scope is 208. But I guess block created an extra scope, right? So contexts, scope. Okay, so we are inside of the expansion scope. That is as I expected. But here in macro scope, expansion scope, parent is who? I guess this is a top level scope. Well, so far this seems exactly as I would expect. But the question is, what happens here? Oh, damn it. I know what happens here. So we will not find it in this scope, and then what we will do is we will try to we will define it in the function scope. Right. And the other one will look it up from the function scope and everything will be fine. But that is sort of not what we want. What we want is to be able to tell it which scope to use instead. How would we do that? First of all, I think I will disable that this path, and I will just panic here. Make to do. And then see if there are other tests that are failing when I do that. Right. Let me disable this one as well. See what's going on. Okay, so we are using it in other places. Which places are those? Okay, this is the machine label test where I do funky stuff. Right. I think I need to rewrite this test. It's kind of awkward anyway, and that's not what I want to do. So let's actually remove this one as well. Maybe at least for now. So if I remove that, is anybody else using forward declarations? Yes. Labels, go to. Label loop. Right, we have an explicit test for this thing. Okay. Here's the plan. The plan is to introduce in the scope an explicit marker that this scope is allowed to have labels. And this is what we will be looking for. So we will say scope flex. Scope flex. Label scope or something like this. Can just labels. That's fine. And when we create a function, we will say that it is a function. So function literal. Yeah, in here we will mark function scope, this one, which is created somewhere. So we will say that function scope flags is scope flags labels. Okay. And this is what we will check for inside of goto. So let's say scope star scope is context scope, while scope and not scope let's call it label scope. If not a label scope, then we will error out. Trying to execute goto outside of a label scope. And this needs to go into here. Okay. So now we get the label scope and we can actually continue doing what we were doing before, except that we are not using this one. We will be using explicit scope that we added. This is a bit more readable, I think. Okay. So that should fix, yes, it fixes the original test. And we can even uncomment, I think, this one as well. But it only marginally helps us with the original problem though. Okay, what is the... So now we could somehow set this scope as the label scope, although this needs to be explicit, I guess. And yeah, so there are two problems. Problem number one is I want to be able to have these syntax statements that have a captured scope. Problem number two is marking each of these scopes as scopes that can have that can have labels. Right. Let's take it one by one. First thing, is to make this work. Statement. So I will introduce new thing into here. I'm not sure it's gonna survive for long, but we are gonna add this, and this is gonna be parse syntax definition. It's gonna be maybe statement, and then maybe transparent. Okay, if it is transparent, actually let's try to run this, because I think it should still work now. Yes. If it's marked as transparent, then I will mark it in a macro. Transparent is not transparent. Right, it's not a member of macro, I know that. So I'll say bool transparent. And what transparent will do is it will basically make the macro expand in a captured scope instead of the regional one. Apply macro syntax and wait, and expansion scope. We will do the following. We'll say macro transparent, and then we will just use captured scope, and if not, we will create a new one. Right. So how does that go? I mean, we are not running the tests with break, so nothing should change, right? Nothing does change. And that is good in this case, and we can get back to our broken tests. So now what happens is when we say go to loop end, we will be referring to whatever was the scope when this was called, which in turn is a captured scope of this thing, which is problematic in itself. Right. Parse syntax definition. Okay, so this should actually be fine. But okay, let's yeah, we have re-enabled the test. Now does it still work? It does. And I can try to run it here, which is our loop end. This should be the right test. It is the right test. So what happens here? We don't find the entry. We try to find the label scope. Looks like there is a bunch of scopes in between. But we did find the label scope, which is the function, I assume. Okay. We forward declare the thing. And we are happy. Okay. That is not perfect, but that is progress. Now, if I want to wrap this up, then what I need to do is to be able to mark this scope as the label scope. Which might cause problems actually. So the problem will be when I try to do a goto inside a condition that goes to something that is not part of this scope. Right. I guess I can live with it for now. That's going to be still an improvement for what we have at the moment, and I will think a bit more about how this is supposed to work. Let's make that happen. And I will just say label scope. I just don't want to introduce a new statement parsing, so for now it's going to be this weird thing that I will do. And in here, in where we have parse label, statement label, yeah. In here, we will say if id source slice equal id source slice literal scope, and then return pick index, and we just mark current scope as a scope that can have literals. So scope flags is scope flags literals. Not literals, sorry. Should be labels. Right. And then in here, I also was doing the wrong thing. It needs to have the same setup. something like this. All right, I have a fix me here, but is it correct? I think, well, we'll see in a second. So we'll comment this out for now, and then we will come back into it. First of all, let's try to see if we even get to here, and then go from there. Okay, scope flags. We are adding the scope. That's great. So that means that when we forward declare, we should get to the right scope. So what is our scope then? Let me add it as a reminder. And now we can go to go to. We still have a thing here. Okay. And the big question would be, will it find the right label scope? And what is the label scope here? It is different one. That's not great. Why is it a different one? Okay, let's look at it again. Actually, I need the other one as well. How do I do this correctly? I think I need more debugging information on the scopes, but I will not go into that at the moment. Let's look at this quickly. So I'm marking this scope as right. That makes sense. It doesn't work because this scope is no longer the right one. So I guess I can make these things unhygienic. Then all of this should work. Maybe. Let's try this out. Okay, it does work. The question is, will the continue work as it should? No. Continue is still very much broken. So that's not a lot of progress. One thing is that in here, yeah, if it can find then it should So let's change this stuff to actually go to label scope like it says it should go to, because now that need should be correct. And let's disable this test for a moment again. Okay, so that is still fine. We are now creating things in the right scope. We actually not double declaring the label anymore, I think. But trying to add a label outside of a label scope. That makes sense. What doesn't make sense is why continue doesn't work. So let's change our go to thing. We'll actually add another one that will loop start. And even not that, I will create a custom one where we'll say loop continue. Actually, nobody goes to loop end, so loop end is perfectly fine. No, that's okay. Oh no, loop start. That was my problem. Label loop continue, and we will say loop continue. That's what I wanted to do. And here loop continue. Right. Now we can break in the right place and see what is going to happen. Right, I need to enable a test. Otherwise nothing happens. Okay, so we are here. What is going on? We try to find the label scope. There's a bunch of them in between. We do find one. Okay, so that's a problem. The problem is that it cannot find the scope. Right. That is because here I need to do something else actually. If this is marked as transparent, then expansion scope, no. So whatever we captured is going to be inside of that scope. That should work. That absolutely should work, but it doesn't. Why? I guess what I can do is I can dump what we have here, scope, print names of context scope. And if we run this now, then we should see at least what is defined there. Okay. we have defined body condition sum x return value. So x is a argument, sum, that makes sense. Body and condition, they are part of the while loop. So somehow this doesn't do what I think it was doing. Let's get back to here. Um, let's turn it into a regular if so I can break here and see that it actually works like I think it does. Okay, are we ever here? Yes, we are. And we are even in the right place here. So that seems fine. So the question is, why doesn't that work? So let's break. And that is continue. And which macro are we trying to expand right now? Group, label, scope. Okay. So we are trying to expand the while. Right. And what is your captured scope? This is our captured scope. We are here again. And this time we are here for the other macro, which is go to loop continue. So that's our continue statement. Good. Now, what is your captured scope? Okay, that doesn't matter. I'm looking for 648. Okay. Expansion scope. I want to find 648. So it has the right parent scope. But that parent scope and does not have flags. What about its parent? Its parent has flags. Great. So why don't you work? That is the question. Right, you are failing terribly. So when we try to do go to loop continue, we cannot find loop continue, right? That is what is happening. Why? I'm just going to add that scope print names, not to here, but to here. Printf macro captured scope. Great. So we have a bunch of them. Does any of them have labels? The answer is no. Why? Okay, so that's definitely the problem, but the question is, why does it happen? So looking at here, this is where we mark the scope. Okay, label start. Loop end. So this is go-to, and I also want to add the same one to this one. Because then I can also check when we try to define it and see in which scope we are trying to define that thing. So if it doesn't find, it takes the current scope. So it should break right away, basically. Well, let's see if that is what happens. Okay, we are inside of statement label. We are trying to define it. We don't find it. We search for the label scope, and this scope should be the one that is label. It is. So far, everything is fine. So this is our new label scope. Now I can try to break in Go2 and see if that's still the case. Okay. The question is this scope reachable from wherever we are right now? And here's what we do. Oh, damn it. Okay, now I get what's happening. I even had this line highlighted and I still missed what was going on. So here we shouldn't look at, actually we don't need the function scope at all. And we shouldn't be looking up in the function scope. We should be looking up in the context scope. Right. So that might help. Maybe. No. No, it did not. Okay. Let's try that again. We are inside label. Our scope is this. We are inside of Go2 and we will be looking at label scope. So we have context scope, right? And it's not the right one. Parent, 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 and now. Right, so we managed to get here with the wrong scope. How is that possible? Not sure. Not sure. How do I debug this? That is a bit annoying. The whole thing with scope and macro expansions always makes my brain hurt, but still need to figure this out. So what do I do? Here we know, so if I re-enable this stuff, we still know that we don't get the right definitions, which we also just saw. Right. The question is, do we get the right definitions? Okay, I don't need this one. This is Go2. Let's add another one with label. So after we are done, in here, that's a lot of printout, but so when we define a label, everything is fine. We do get this. Right. Right. I think I know what's going on, and that's gonna be very, very annoying to figure out if I'm correct. So in here, we do have the correct scope, but because there is an extra set of braces here, this scope here is actually not the same scope as the other one, as the one inside of the condition or inside of the body. Okay. What do I do about this? Okay. Getting back to this, I need to remove the scope somehow in here. How do I do that? I guess I can add a special operator that will remove the scope. Something like no scope here. And that should help the issue. Obviously that's not amazing, but we can try to make that happen. Where would it be? It would be in token parse expression. If I can find it. All right. So here, I think I want it to be not a keyword, but rather an operator, something like that. And then I can have handle operator, token eval operator. Right. So it is something similar to this. We have body. I expect it to be curly. And if it is a curly, then writer must be followed by a curly brace. And if it is a curly brace, I want to say token parse block no scope. Context. I do not remember what this needs. It needs context, block, and block result value. Okay, context, block, and result value. I have those. So let's see if that helps at all. First of all, I want to know that I'm even getting here. So let's start with that. I am not getting there. A known operator Right. Because I need to define that as an operator. And let's just say that it's same as compile time execution in terms of precedence. Let's try again. Okay, I do get there. Now I can remove this panic. And let's see if that helped at all. Where is my scope? Print names. Let's bring it back to here and see if we are any better with the captured scope. Oh, okay. So that was the issue, right? I think I need to figure out something better in terms of how this whole scope setup is supposed to work. But that at least wraps up the main thing. And that will be all for this issue. Okay, that sort of wraps it up for today. Thank you much for watching and hopefully see you next time.